Today I am with Ariel from Revolutionary Thinking. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff, but one of the first things we're going to hit is clout culture. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it present in the Yang Gang? But before we get started, let's get Andrew to start us up.
There's no place to hide now that he's arrived. I'm saying he ain't playing now with this campaign. Bang, dang, it's and Drew, come roll with the Yang Gang. Drew Yang Gang, that's who I hooked up with. Drew Yang Gang, that's who I hooked up with. Drew Yang Gang, that's who I hooked up. Yo, there's no place to hide now that he's arrived. I'm saying he ain't playing now with this campaign. Bang, dang, it's and Drew.
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds.
What is going on, Ariel? Welcome to the show.
Oh, I'm really glad to be here, and I'm glad you decided to pick me up, even though I'm only at 1,000 subscribers.
Well, congratulations on getting 1,000. I tell you, that first 1,000 is harder than the next 1,000.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
And I'm sure I've heard like giant YouTubers say, basically every new milestone is 1,000 mark is a huge deal. So when did you start the channel?
Oh my goodness. I started it like 10 years ago.
Wow.
And at that time, like the whole point of revolutionary thinking for me was that, like the United States was founded on a revolution.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everybody deserves to talk about what they want to talk about. We don't want these hierarchies where some people are deemed like ordained by God and other people can just like suffer or be unfairly taxed and not have a voice. So I liked that. And the thing that I saw was that sometimes in our schooling system, we don't live by those values because a lot of times kids who are creatively oriented
Mm-hmm.
and think in different ways, the school system kind of stamps that out. So revolutionary thinking means like we need a revolution in the way we think about some of the things that we just take for granted in our society.
And how does that tie into one of your favorite topics, this notion of clout and how that's come about?
Sure. Ever since I was young, like I grew up in LA, Hollywood, California, a lot of like celebrity culture here, basically like the epicenter. And ever since I was growing up, I always thought to myself, like, why is it that all these celebrities are getting attention? They're getting like paparazzi and people who want to take their pictures and people who just want to like get their autograph and stuff. And it's like there's so many people out there that are like doctors who may have ideas, or other people out there that are just as important, but yet like they're getting all the attention and we're kind of like over here and we're kind of like, oh, we're nobodies. And I didn't really like that. And I was thinking to myself, the doctors and the scientists and the nerds and the technologists, where's this kind of fervor for what they're trying to do or what they're trying to accomplish in the world? And if I did some of the things that these celebrities do and they get so much attention and hype, I'd be in a straitjacket in a mental hospital. It's kind of so growing up, I was always thinking to myself, we pay so much attention to the things that don't push our society forward and don't really help with like our kind of growth and evolution as a human species.
So what do you think is the solution to that? Because some people could say that that's like kind of like natural law that a very small percentage of people tend to attract a lot of attention. Like this is like that blockbuster effect where one professional athlete at the top of his game might have 10 times more fans than the second best person. And you see this in Hollywood with actors as well. Do you think
Yeah.
that's something that we can ever change, or how would you even address that?
I mean, I don't know. I can't look into the future, but I think that a culture based on substance is a way more advanced and civilized culture than a culture based on spectacle.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would
Look,
agree with
look
that. But do you think man wants substance, or does man want entertainment and drama?
well, I think certain men want a substance, and certain men and even women, whatever you are,
Mm-hmm.
want the entertainment and drama. I just think the ratio is unfortunately more want the entertainment and drama and less want the substance, because at the end of the day, people are maybe tired of their jobs, their work, and all that than look up like a doctor or a scientist that's trying to do something important to, I don't know, change the way we live or make our lives just better.
Yeah, I mean that I think Andrew's challenges in the presidential are an example where he was coming up with all of these proposals and pretty thoughtful kind of analyses of root causes of different challenges we face as a country. But folks like Pete Buttigieg or Bernie or Warren, they got a lot more attention than our
Right.
buddy Andrew did. Even though, like, if you're into the 3-hour podcast, then Andrew is your man.
Exactly. And I want to put up here,
Mm-hmm.
it's we have a kind of microcosm in a macrocosm, if you ever know what that means, because we saw the kind of Yang media blackout, the way he wasn't being taken seriously.
Mm-hmm.
But inside of the Yang gang itself, sometimes we have those same dynamics happening, where these Yang influencers are like at the
Mm-hmm.
cool kids table, and these other Yang influencers are like, they're just over there, but like they're not on the top, so it's just naturally occurring even within a movement that tries to be the opposite of that.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I mean, on the one hand, like I kind of understand. There was some controversy when we did a panel with with Andrew himself and a bunch of creators, and it was organized by the campaign. And I wasn't part of picking who was on the panel, but I'm pretty sure there was some sorting by sub count as a shorthand, right? But then,
Right.
I
Yeah.
also know that a lot of people were like, what the hell? Like, how come so and so wasn't invited to this panel? And I mean, part of it is like, in that case, it was it was the campaign trying to get the message out to as many people as possible. So I'm curious to get your thoughts. Like, do you dispute that? Like, how do you think is it that type of instance where clout affects like inclusion, or are you thinking? Have you seen other instances where this kind of unhealthy dynamic plays out?
I've seen instances. I can just say what bothers me the most is that the people who need the most help are the people who are getting the least amount of attention. That's the thing. And eyeballs as possible and get the message out to as much people as possible. But we also need a diversity of opinions and perspectives
Mm.
that put things into play, like people to go like, oh, I never thought of that before, I never thought of this before. And if we keep giving the same people the same amount of attention, we're never going to get those different perspectives and different opinions. And you might have someone who's a diamond in the rough or a
Mm-hmm.
real gem, but you're never going to know who they are if you keep giving the same amount of attention to the same exact people all the time.
Yeah. Now, when you say keep giving, like, I give you an example. Within the Yang Gang, the Nerds channel is, we have a decent audience. We're not the biggest kid on the block kind of thing. And sometimes I look at that, I'm like, that's the audience speaking. Not everybody is into like the stuff I do. And I that's fine. Like, I make the content that I like making, and if some people find it useful, that's great. If not, like, that's cool too. What part of this do you think is kind of the audience deciding how to spend their time versus any necessarily like kind of stacked deck?
It's well, I mean, who's in control of the YouTube algorithm? Who's in control of like what's the word I'm looking for? Sometimes I'm subscribed to channels and I have the bell on, and sometimes I don't even get the notifications. And I don't even see them as suggestions, but because like who is back there in all these back channels that have to do with what appears in front of your face once you type in a name of a website. So we're never going to know that. And some of it is also that some of these smaller people want help from the bigger people, but the bigger people always just want to become bigger and bigger and bigger instead of collaborating with the smaller people. And I had a guy on my channel not too long ago, and his name was Harry Hirsch, and he was like, I'm just a nobody, but he said something and it really resonated with me. We should be standing on the shoulders of giants instead of just kissing their feet. So that means that, look, if you have like that and it's good and it's like kind of going, like, when is it that you show people or you teach them, like, how did you get there and what happened? Because to a lot of people, they may have the passion, the talent, the intelligence, and all of those things. How does it get in front of people?
Have you tried reaching out to larger kind of Yang Gang creators and said, hey, I'm making stuff too. It would be awesome if you could,
Boyce is really good at that, but just between you and me, it's like when the campaign was going on and California, especially LA, was a big Yang Gang activity hotspot.
Sure, yeah.
So it was funny. I met Paget Kagi at the park, and I said, hey, I'm revolutionary thinking. And then I'm like, okay, my real name is Ariel. But she laughed and she said, nobody has ever like came up to me and introduced themselves by their YouTube handles before. it was like a funny thing that happened because I would leave comments, and I finally met her and we really got engaged in a conversation. So it's funny. Then we did this thing near Westwood, near UCLA. And then I told her, like, Paget, I'm a former Trump supporter, and I really want to talk about like what, got me on board with Yang. And then she's like, no, Ariel, save it. And we'll leave it all for when I have you on. A couple of weeks passed by, and we're still doing activities and stuff. But like she doesn't, like, I don't hear from her. And then once Yang suspends his campaign and a couple of weeks in, I see her again at another event near MacArthur Park, and I say, hey, we never had that interview. And then she says, okay, we'll get to it. And to her credit, she did give me the interview, and I mirrored it over on my own channel. But all of a sudden, like a week after that interview, she unlisted it, and then like it was just unlisted. But that's after it got all the views and the comments and stuff. But it was still just like unlisted, and I wasn't given a reason. Maybe she's working on her channel, she's doing her own thing in there. But I mean, yeah, it's nice to. I don't know how to say this. Like when you're physically next to people and stuff and you're talking to them and you have that like human kind of connection, but then when it goes into the online world, it's like all of a sudden it's this clout competition again. It's this like, oh, I don't have the time, or you're the small guy, or like we don't care anymore. And I just don't think that's conducive to kind of like humanity first that we're talking about, and everybody deserves like a chance to talk or to prove themselves or to have their opinions heard.
Yeah. Well, I think in thank you for sharing that. That sounds like quite a journey there. I would say in Paget's defense, I believe there was a period after the campaign where a lot of her videos went unlisted. And so I don't know that it was just yours. And you know, so but that's a tough one. The other thing I've noticed is that for a lot of the creators, I mean, like our interview has been on and off, and I was changing the time and all that kind of thing. I think part of the challenge is some people may not know that many creators are doing this on the side, and it's not our full-time thing, and so sometimes we're not super organized, or like I've noticed when people some folks have been frustrated that I don't reply to DMs often, and part of it is because I get a lot of DMs that aren't relevant to anything, you know, and they're just yeah.
Look, Tom, I can understand overwhelm. I got that. That makes a lot of sense, and I can understand it. What I do not accept is not having integrity, giving people the runaround, telling people that you're going to do something, and it just kind of disappears. Look, if people are upfront and honest with me and say like, look, I just can't do this, or this is why I couldn't do this, and I just don't have the time, I accept that, and that's, you know, your life, your business. But to send people on a wild goose chase and say, yeah, I'm ready, and this will happen, and then at the last minute, just poof, ghost, I think that's what bothers me. You know
Yeah, no, that
about?
certainly is frustrating. And I've been on the other end of that where I had some big YouTubers say, "Oh yeah, you know, we should do something together," and then like it didn't happen. I mean, part of me also feels like every creator is trying to grow, and if they have opportunities to get bigger guests, and it's always relative, they're going to bump often the smaller ones, just like they do like on the Tonight Show and stuff, right?
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Now, the one thing I will say is that lately I have been making an effort to have Yang tubers on the Nerd Show who are smaller than my channel explicitly because I feel like we need to kind of help each other grow. And if everybody kind of pays it forward, then the whole movement grows. And so that's something that it would be great for all of the folks. And so that's something that it would be great for all of the folks creating Yang Gang content to think about. Like, when was the last time you had another creator who's building pro Andrew Yang content who's smaller than you, maybe even much smaller than you? Get them on your show, you know? Like, what's the big deal? It's all good.
Right. And it's not just this problem of clout culture with YouTube and creators and etc., what have you. It permeates into all of our society. Like, you know, the startup or like this, it's like let me just say this, having a lot of clout and having a lot of viewers or a lot of fans should never give someone a license to not have integrity, to, you know, say things that aren't true, or to lead someone on a wild goose chase with, you know, nothing at the other end of that thing that they were looking for as well, where you're told that if you study all these things and if you get all these grades and if you do your assignments and if you finish all your tests and all that stuff, you know, there's that thing waiting for you at the other end. And then when that doesn't fall, like there's no follow through, that's when people get frustrated, and rightfully so, because it's like I followed all the rules, I did what I was told to do, but it's like, I'm not, and there's a woman like that living in poverty, and that's what's been happening to her. Her name is Jacqueline Human, and unfortunately, like, she was trafficked as a child and stuff like that. But there's just a lot of stuff in our society that, it's usually the people that go through hardships and pain and suffering that we should be looking to help and to lift up. But instead, people who already have the money, people who already have the clout, people who already have the views and subscribers, it's like we're looking to like give more of a help to them, or more of a lift to them, or more perks to them, when it should really be the other way around.
Yeah, I think that frustration within this topic of Cloutism is also, I think, explains a lot of the Trump attraction back in 2016, I guess, when I think a lot of people felt like, wait a minute, the rules of work hard, play, be honest, and you and your kids will be better off than the previous generation. I think a lot of people discovered that doesn't always apply, and it applies even less frequently as with each subsequent decade. And we do have a winner take most economy right now, for sure. And I guess I'm curious, like, so you went from Trump to Yang. Were you on the Biden train, or did you go back to Trump? Because I know a lot of Yang gang went back to Trump.
No, I mean, like, I just wrote in Yang. I didn't. This is California, so it's gonna go to Biden anyway. So I really didn't care. But that's the thing, though. Yang is dealing with the same kind of thing in this macrocosm that we're talking about over here. And I think the best thing that Andrew Yang could have done, which I can do this, it's good to have the data, the analytics, and the science behind you and be that, but he didn't have the fire that Trump had. He didn't have the passion that Trump had. I think if you can get the data and the part of it down, and the passion and riling people up part of it down, and combine those two, you are an unstoppable force. That's where I could have came in.
Yeah, that would have been a potent combo. I mean, right now, even post Trump, I am seeing a lot of fire in the Trump kind of MAGA camp with the Lauren Boebert and the Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, they definitely, when I go look at their Twitter feeds, it's always about like, oh, these
exactly. Now we as Yang Gang can learn from that, and we can say, like, these Republicans are working for the corporations that took away your pension. Those thieves, those terrible human beings. How can you do this to people who have worked so hard? These Wall Street, big tech guys, look, the Republicans are getting, money from them too. These are the Republicans. Like we can use that to our own advantage and kind of turn the tables if we can reverse engineer what they can do for what we're trying to do with a universal basic income. It's great. And I think the best way to go about that is, like, let's try like labeling the universal basic income as like the great American refund for all of like the corruption and the incompetence of the government and the bureaucrats that we have to deal with, and something like that, to give people that sense of like, oh, we're owed something and we're annoyed that this has been taken away from us. So like because I was part of that camp, I know that, riling up energy, and like I can just use that. And it's funny because I'm like a Toastmasters high achiever right here. So all the time that I don't know if you can see
Oh
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, congrats.
Yeah. So thank you. And all the time that I make my speeches, I love getting people riled up, but I want to do it for a good cause instead of for conspiracy theories and further dividing people.
Yeah, well, let me show you an example of how the MAGA world is very effective at riling people up. It'll be good to get your thoughts on that. I should also note that earlier you had referenced YouTube recommendations and notifications. I should disclose that I previously worked at YouTube, and I did not respond to what you were saying because I don't want. This is my personal channel, and I don't want to represent the company. So my absence of responding to you is not agreeing or disagreeing with what you were saying.
Okay.
Okay, now let's take a look at what the MAGA riling up skills are, because they're quite. I'm always impressed at how effective they can be. Here, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see
All
it
right,
right
so
now.
this is a Congresswoman, Lauren Boebert, and you see here radical liberals, right out of the gates with the name calling. Radical liberals want to destroy the American nuclear family so that people can depend on the government. There is nothing more important than the family unit, and every policy put forth should keep this in mind. Then there's a whole bunch of stuff on
Okay.
guns. Yeah.
Okay, Tom. So how can we reverse engineer that?
Okay.
Radical conservatives want to destroy the American nuclear family by overworking their workers to death and not giving any time to spend home with their children by taking away like maternity pay and all that stuff.
I like it.
you,
I like
you
it.
know, right?
Yeah.
So we like Wall Street bets, we use their own powers against them. Like Snape, like, you dare use my own spells against me, Potter? Like you know what I mean? So let's see where we go with that, because that's how I was former Trump. And it's like, yeah, I am owed this UBI, and I got riled up about that. So if we can reverse engineer their greatest superpower and just do a complete flip on it.
Now, the one thing I will say, Ariel, is that while that I would agree would be very effective in the near term, I also worry that that sense of outrage that those statements produce, I think, contribute to the polarization of the country, and it becomes like with the Brobert, you're either for her or you're just like beneath contempt.
So let's so here's my thing. Like, let's get like a Bobert supporter and kind of talk to them about a UBI and say that, okay, you think that government is intrusive and are trying to destroy the nuclear family and all that stuff, but did you know that, like, when corporations overwork people like this and they don't give like maternity leave, that like this also leads to a lot of divorce, a lot of stress, a lot of stuff like that, and like open up that dialogue to see, like, instead of just instant judgment, just to kind of see why, and go at it at like this scientific, like, kind of view. Because if there's one thing I knew that I was good at, I was always good at being an ambassador for like two different opposing points of view and trying to connect them and getting into the details. And you can't really do that in a setting where people are like already riled up. But you can say, like what Yang tried to do, you can say, like, we get it that these jobs have gone away and that you were promised something that never materialized. But how about if I tell you it's not because of the radical Democrats, and it's actually because of all of this power that has been like concentrated at the top? But I think when people see these people, they just say like they're beyond contempt and they're crazy, and like we're not just going to open up that dialogue.
So how do you suggest, how do you think the next 12 months are going to play out under the Biden administration? I think Joe is definitely taking I would say I feel like he's trying to take the high road. He's not really, getting into fistfights with the Trump people. Do you think that's a good idea, or like I kind of would be okay with the pretty kind of boring
Well,
administration that just kind of pushes the ball up the field?
right, but for the people who are in need the most, and for the people who are suffering the most through this pandemic, I'd say he needs to kind of get the fists out. But I don't know if him or his administration is smart enough to take my suggestions, or like a lot of us in Yang Gang can reach out to very moderate conservatives and kind of try to balance that, where we're telling them that UBI can help them like create jobs and works in their own communities and to trust their neighbors more than like a big centralized system. But I think that if the Biden administration like completely ignores us and our movement, that's not going to look good. So I'm worried about that a little bit.
And what are your thoughts on what Andrew's up to now in New York? Are you following that closely, or?
I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
I mean, more power to him. He's doing that. Whatever gets him there. But I think that the one biggest thing that I have on Andrew is that there is such a thing as being too nice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the way that Trump just like railroaded all those other candidates out of the way when he was running and when he was doing those debates, of course, Andrew, like I'm not saying he do that, but I'm saying like not attacking people per se, but just pointing out all the flaws that they're talking about in a way that's really passionate, in a way that really speaks to people. And I think that you can just go that much further, because sometimes people like a person who's willing to not only defend themselves, but
Mm-hmm.
defend their supporters too, and push back against unfair criticisms.
So is it your view that nice Andrew is going to end up losing the mayoral race, or is it more that if he wins,
Well,
he won't be able to get
well,
anything done, or?
no. If he wins, he'll be able to get things done. But what gives me so much faith in his mayoral election is that now it's on the flip side. Now Andrew is coming in with all of this name recognition
Mm-hmm.
from his presidential campaign,
Yeah.
whereas all the other ones who are competing him are kind of like in his position when he was running for president.
Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
it's
mean, I
ironic.
kind of prefer this side of the of the
Right.
campaign.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Everyone does. But it's funny because Andrew ran for president, then ran for mayor of New York, but all these mayors of New York were running for president. So he kind of went at it the reverse.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and it seems to be working. He's leading in the polls, and certainly he
yeah.
seems way more interesting than a lot of the other folks running, in my opinion.
Right. But here's the main thing for me is this. If there's someone who's like bleeding out and needs immediate help, you're like running towards them to stop the bleeding, and you're kind of like pushing people out of the way, but you're not like kind of like running and then bumping into someone on the way and being all like, "Oh, I'm sorry, like I bumped into you. You know, this person is like having a hard time and I'm just trying to," like you just like go and do it. And that's the danger of being too nice. That's the danger of like not having that sense of urgency. So I'd like to see a lot more like things like righteous indignation and like passion from the Yang Gang.
Mm.
It'll kind of make us a force to be reckoned with first, but not humanity first in a way that you just let people say whatever they want about you and there's no consequences to that. You know, it's you got to find that balance, because if you're just a pushover or a doormat, it's really hard to get anything done.
Now, I will tell you, I do enjoy that a lot of Yang Gang discussions, especially during the presidential, were super thoughtful and very nice and very kind of data driven and open-minded. And I do remember some interactions with Bernie supporters where there was more than a helpful serving of righteous indignation, and I've kind of found that a little off-putting. Do you feel like there's a risk that if the Yang Gang gets a little too intense, that it could kind of push people away?
It can push some people away. That definitely is a danger. But I think that if we did the Trump campaign push a lot of people away, they still made it to the presidency. I'm not saying we become like that, but I'm just saying that those people who have that high energy and want that high engagement, it'll attract them. But we also have this passion and energy in a way that's not like so negative, and it's just like bullying. It's a passion and energy that it's like, hey, when you say things that are untrue about us, or when you want to make a big deal out of a little thing, we're just kind of calling out your BS. It's kind of like with after what happened at the Parkland massacre with that school shooting, those kids had a lot of passion and energy, but it was for a good cause and a right cause. So if we have that kind of passion and energy, but not in a way that's bullying, I do think it'll attract more people rather than push them away.
Tell me about your thoughts for 2024. And let's just assume Yang decides to remain mayor because he will have, probably a lot more that he wants to get done in New York City. Are you finding other candidates that you're getting excited about or you're looking forward to?
Well, I don't want to jump the gun.
Mm-hmm.
The only ones that look, if somebody ran in 2024 and they had better ideas and more well thought out ideas than Andrew Yang, I'd gladly just support them.
Mm-hmm.
But unless they're supporting a universal basic income, probably just going to go with Yang. If they adopt that universal basic income and I see that they can really think things through like the way Yang does, I'm open to it. But I have to see the substance. I don't care about the spectacle like what we talked about.
What if Yang isn't an option? Because
what if Yang isn't an option? Well, I think the movement is important. That even if something were to happen to Yang and he jumped in a teleport thing and he was on Mars with like no way of coming back, we as not just the Yang Gang, but we as just Americans who care and who have seen all the institutional rot and nonsense, we have the power to prop someone up who's going to support a UBI. We already have all those arguments. We already know the kind of policies that we need. So I'm not pinning it on so much who is that person who's running, but are they going to have the same kinds of forward-thinking policies that's going to lead to like less suffering and less poverty and all those things.
So let's say for the 2020 field in the primaries, other than Yang, did you see someone else that, you thought, okay, this person would be potentially pro basic income and could adopt a lot of Yang-like approaches?
Yeah, it's kind of like Marianne.
Okay. That makes sense. Now I think okay. So how do you respond when people say those are both ultra impressive people, but they are so far outside the mainstream that the party will never go there? And maybe people would say that about Yang too, in fairness.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, that's because of the clout culture that we live in. If you guys saw what's going on the ground, like I'd rather people have their basic needs met and a UBI and working our way towards the future, rather than just going with this ossified party that's still stuck in like a land before time. And I know that may come as a little bit of like standoffish,
Hmm.
but what are they going to respond to that?
Hmm.
That's what I want to know. Like what response? Because then they'll just say, "Oh, well, that's just the way things are." Well, I mean, living in caves was just the way things were too, but we've surely changed.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
yeah.
I tend not to be quite as on the sort of left side of the Democratic Party, but I will say this,
Hmm.
that I would agree with you if you look at what happened just this past election in Congress and Senate. The Democratic Party did not clean house, like did not clean up and run the table. And I guess there's an open question. Some people say that the party went too far to the left, and some people say the party was too playing it too safe. It sounds like you think the party needs like a whole new kind of generation of
I
ideas.
think that I think we should just scrap left and right. I'm coming in from the Trump camp, and I know that may sound impossible, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like I left and right are just directions to me. Does this make sense? Does this find the solution that we want? And does this put us in a position that like we want to be in? And we can all kind of like elaborate on that. And it's like, hey, you want to call yourself a Republican, independent, what have you? I want to see like the results. I want to see the test, and you show me that. And yeah, so I like maybe I'm thinking a little bit too far into the future, but I think like that'll just be beautiful, just to like scrap it and just say like, look, and that's how we get people like Fred the Felon. That's how we get like all these like former Trump supporters to join us and be like, look, this culture war stuff, it's just a headache for me. Like, let's get these solutions. Let's do that, and then there's this giant weight lifted off of our shoulders, and then we can talk about left, right, center, up, down, south, east, west.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Let me get some questions from the audience
Sure.
before we wrap up, Ariel. And while we're waiting for questions from the audience in the chat, I did want to kind of pick your brain about what do you think, other than basic income? Um, well, I guess two questions. One is, what do you think are going to be the key winning approaches for kind of the 2024 winner? And then the second question is, what do you think is going to happen to those Trump voters? Like, are they going to stay in the Republican Party? Are they going to start their own? My two questions for you.
Okay. So the first one, just say it really quick. The
Oh, yeah.
the
The
first
first
question.
one was,
Okay.
other than basic income, what's going to be the winning formula for the winner in 2024?
Oh, okay. The winning formula, just uh alleviating alleviating this economic pain. And
Hmm.
that's kind of like basically whether it's but alleviating the sense of economic pain will be a winner in 2024.
Mm-hmm. And I guess if you play that out, the Republican approach will be cutting taxes and cutting
Mm-hmm.
regulation. But I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that's going to address the
Right,
people having the most pain. That actually helps the
right,
winners.
right, exactly. And it's our job as the Yang Gang to teach conservatives that, and not just look down upon them and shun them and
Mm-hmm.
say that they're bigots or this or that. I mean, maybe a contingent are, but the thing is that the like just don't shun when you can open up a dialogue. And I've seen that a lot on like the Bernie camp and the Hillary camp, just like shunning, and that doesn't work. And I saw in the Yang camp that we didn't do that. We like opened up people's minds. So, which leads into your next question. The
Mm-hmm.
the the Trump people are, they just have this righteous indignation. Now, if we can get that righteous indignation, whether it's, justified or not, and I don't know, anyone can argue either way. And even your brother, I think, has it in the bed because I saw him on here. Yeah. It's kind of yeah. And the thing is that we reverse engineer and harness the passion and the indignation that some of these conservatives have towards a UBI. I think we're a big force to be reckoned with in the future of politics.
All right. Well, let me pull in some comments from the audience, Ariel. So one is from our buddy Trumper for Yang, and he's saying that a lot of folks in the Democratic Party went too far with pro-violence virtue signaling, excusing the violent riots was terrible, calling anyone that disagrees a racist was terrible. What's your thoughts on that? That's a tough balancing act, right? Because there are probably racists in all parties, but I think there are racists in the Trump camp. Not all, but there definitely are.
It's definitely a tough balancing act, but I think that's why the idea of just direct cash to people is such a cure-all, because when people face this kind of economic pain, they're gonna lash out in like different ways. But I know it's not just economic pain, it's like racial justice too. But if I think you got like a Black Lives Matter person and you just got to sit them with, okay, so maybe Trumper for Yang can go on what were those African American?
Oh, Melanated Council of Yang. Yeah, we have them on the Nerd Show.
Yeah. He can go on their show and they can just discuss that.
That would be cool.
Because we're the Yang is what brings them together. But then that's it. You see, it's a conduit. It's believing in this UBI and believing in this economic justice is like a conduit for people on the left and the right to not just scream at each other like lunatics and just discuss things.
Fair enough. So Nam has a question here. How do you combine righteous indignation with Yang Gang love that we all know so well? They seem contradictory. Do you think there's a winning
what
cocktail?
About like righteous love? Like, I love the fact that I'm going to get this freedom dividend and these corporations don't have my soul tied to their bottom line. Like, this is the revolution of love. We can all love it. Be creative, be fun, but still like combine it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because certainly for the last presidential, the pure Yang Gang love approach got us a few percent, and you need more than that to win the White House.
I'm here. I'll be an advisor. I mean, I've been on. Yeah.
Well, Ariel, before we wrap, I do want to see if there's anything else that you wanted to shout out or any messages you wanted to share with the audience.
Thank you. Yes. Basically, I'm working with Jeremy De La Rosa with Leyline. Mm-hmm. He said he's spoken to you in the past.
Yeah, he's been on the show. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's okay, great. So I'm working with him, and we want to, like, it's like humanity first gaming. Mm-hmm. Gaming is such a power, and there's so many gamers who are like on both sides of the political aisle. Mm-hmm. We can harness that energy too, and also let's see. I just want to shout out, like, go check out Jacqueline Human's channel too, and that's it. I'm like working on this thing with Leyline, and damn, how could I forget? Oh my god, the Yang Gang Roundtable podcast. Please check us out. His name is Shale. It's like we were independent. We have over, like, we're doing our 169th episode, I think, tomorrow with Reverend Wendy Hamilton. We're trying to grow that.
Nice. Yeah. So the Rev is running for Congress, right? Is she?
Yes, she is. They're two of my favorites, her and Erica Rhodes. And I wish David Kim won, because he's in the district. Maybe next time, but yeah.
You know, that David Kim thing is painful because if the Yang Gang, and I also need to own up to this, if we had run the numbers, I think we would have found that focusing on 2 or 3 Yang Gang for Congress races exclusively, where we were competing in districts where we had a good, really good shot, may have resulted in David getting a little more help, and because he only lost by a very tiny fraction of votes, right?
Man.
So, but David's a young fella. I don't think he's going anywhere.
Look, I was born in 1988, and Joe Biden has been running for president ever since I was born. Literally.
Yeah, true. So hopefully it won't take David that long to get there.
Exactly. But I'm just saying, like, we're how long have the Yang Gang even been in commission as presidential run? Like, it's just
really only 2 years. Yeah.
Biden 31. So we'll definitely do better next time, and we're growing, and that's really great to see.
Well, Ariel, I really appreciate you coming into the Nerd Zone. For those of you who've enjoyed this conversation, go check out Ariel's channel, Revolutionary Thinking, and subscribe to it. You'll get a lot of great content and another perspective. So it'll kind of add some diversity to the YangTube subscriptions.
So this is the world of the future that I'm looking forward to, like flying airships and blimps and like just imagine like a vacation in the sky. But yeah.
That sounds pretty good. Hopefully they'll get the virus under control if it goes into that sealed device. but nothing that technology can't solve. Ariel, I hope we can get you back on and keep making great content and keep pushing. Congrats on the 1,000 sub mark, man. That's that's no small feat. So keep at it.
Yeah, with your guys' help, and definitely, like, since you have the ears of like Scaramucci and Andrew Yang, sometimes medium-sized YouTubers can be conduits for the smaller YouTubers to get to at least put a perspective that those medium YouTubers weren't even thinking of, and you're like, hey, that's a good idea, So it's all about the collabs, man. It's awesome.
I agree, man. I agree. This is for this movement to really reach its full potential, to feature other Yang Gang creators who are smaller than you, because that is the only way the entire community grows. If we just keep concentrating on the usual suspects, like, that's great too, but we can even get further if it's a broader movement and everybody's growing.
Perfectly said.
All right. Well, with that, we're going to say goodbye, nerds.
Goodbye, nerds.
I love it.